Chief strategic solver. We're all solvers.
Love it.
You got a problem, we try to solve it. But that's, when there's a definition of done, that definition should marry to some problem statement or some objective, right? I don't want to build you a thing. You don't want me to build you a thing because you like things. You
But
want
it
me to build
happens.
you something
It,
because you
it
got a
really, really
problem.
happens. You lead me to one of my other points here. And I know we have a little tight on time. I often think, and I preach, I really, really preach future-proofing a business to make it scalable, applicatable, simple, and you have to future-proof things. You can't come up with these Rube Goldberg type solutions that, you know what, you know, some guy in a corner has all up in here. No, it's got to be basic, well documented, and then scalable. You're talking a lot like an awful lot about people. And you're really saying one of the most important things to future proof a business. And I think you can complicate these businesses so much, but I believe that you can also simplify them. And I'm a simple guy. I'm a very simple cat. At the end of the day, I mean, you know what? If you're doing more than like 3, 4 things, I don't know how you're doing. I mean, and by the way, somebody walks into my office and they don't have a pencil and paper. I tell them all the time, you must be a lot smarter than me because, like, I don't know how. I don't remember, how many cups of coffee I had today, let alone you're going to talk about this subject matter and you're just going to remember it. You got to be kidding me.
They're like, I
So
worked at Chili's.
what's that?
They're like, I worked at Chili's.
Fantastic. That's good for you.
Yeah.
But I think you might agree, and I'm just curious your thoughts. Probably one of the most important elements of future proofing a solution that you're going to hand off to a client or just a business in general probably comes down to the people and how you sort of ways of working and who does what when.
Yeah. Well, and this kind of touches back on the AI, but like, honestly, most of the software that we work with is built by humans to be used by humans, right? I mean, even an API, which is just moving data around, you know what I mean? It was built by somebody to be read and maintained by somebody else, right? And that's why we have, iPaaS solutions, because it needs to scale. And, at the end of the day, one person is working for a group of people that are requesting a thing, right? I've got a problem. I think technology can solve it. And I want you to help me build it, right? And so what we ask is, what's the problem? What are the components of the problem today? What does it do well? What does it do poorly? What does it not do? So then we define what it's going to need to do. And then we say, who's going to use it, right? And who's going to maintain it, right? And what does that need to look like, And then finally, the question I always asked you, probably your first point is, what else might you want this to do down the road? Because I don't want to build that now, and I don't need to build that now, but I have to build the thing that I'm building so it does not make it harder to build that thing, right? That's sort of the do no harm thing.
By the way, you're probably in a
Scalability has
class
to
of
be built
maybe one
early.
of 2 or 3 folks in your role I've ever even heard ask that question. And it's shocking. Look, it's so easy to build a thing, and you know perfectly well. You probably know better than the client does. Yeah, I'm going to build it, but in 6 months they're going to have this need, this problem, this headache, whatever, and you're going to. A lot of folks in your seat, they're silent because they know they'll come back, and then they'll buy another whatever round of consulting and this and that and then go from scratch. But like you're basically saying you're leaving all kinds of windows ajar and doors open to say, okay, I'm going to architect this knowing that, by the way, you have a well defined point of view on this industry. And you've done this so many times before that if a car is coming down the street, don't cross, right? Like, that. You didn't need to be told, hey, there's a car coming. Maybe I should wait. But like so many folks in the industry, I've seen this and it's brutal. And they'll go to a big enterprise and then they'll just get fleeced. and they get away with it. But you're approaching it very, very thoughtfully and respectfully, and basically saying, I know that if you want a front end, redo of a front end, great, fantastic. I'm going to do that. But I don't put words in your mouth, but you're saying, you know what? You may very, very well need a new OMS, a new WMS, a new whole set of APIs to support all this stuff. You're leaving some nodes to go where you could just go plug right into that stuff.
Yeah. And, when you talk about sort of whatever you want to call it, just the technology to simplify it a little bit, especially now, these are such hyper connected infrastructures, you know. A lot of people like to use the term composable, and then a lot of people don't like the term composable, but I'm like, well, I mean, it's just composable by nature. You got pieces, the pieces are connected to each other, right? In any ecosystem where things are connected, it's really, really hard not to touch one thing and expect that it's not going to change anything else, right? And so the question that I always ask, and I don't make anyone do anything because I can't, quite frankly, though, is to say, if you want to change this thing without creating additional problems, you should probably change this thing first. That is the nature of your flow, whether it's process or data or whatever it is. Right. And so, let's look at that. If you don't want to do that, then what I will do is present to you the lowest footprint solution for the one thing that you're attempting to change, and then, maybe that thing will generate additional revenues or save you some money, and we can self-fund some of the more fundamental changes that you need or whatever. And that's, just part of doing business. Like, I might only have this much budget right now, and I've got a low-hanging fruit and I want to do it. And I know that that's there. But if I didn't say anything about that, and the thing that we built did harm, sort of on the hook for this now, right? Lying by omission. That's not a good way to build relationships. It's not a way that I like to do business. I'd rather be the Rockport of SIs. Let me put it to you that way. I don't want growing just to grow, right? Is not. I don't believe that it's sustainable for the way that we want to do things. For our brand, I'm never going to write down, this year I have 150 developers and next year I want to have 300 developers. What the hell is that? Who cares, right? Like, what I want to be able to do is to persist this vision that we have to make a good place for myself and my employees to work. And I want, to go out in the marketplace. And when I see people that we've done work for, I want to be able to, smile at them and have them smile at me and say, it's good to see you. And if they need help, then, we're here. So I think that's like the most real important thing. And, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And that's the nature of life. But we have questions that we can ask, right? We all know that, to try to sort of get there. And hopefully you do. And if you miss one, you say, my bad. Let's turn this thing over and look at it from another angle.
It happens.
But I think, and, I don't want to paint a broad brush here. There's a ton of people in this industry, that are good about raising their hand, and a lot, and just like everybody else, sometimes the answer is like, good point, but nah. And that's, that's a problem that maybe you just don't have the muscle to solve from where you're sitting. But you should always raise your hand, right?
Well, look, I really, really appreciate, spending some time together, Pete. It was a pleasure. Check out Pete Shea, check out Solvative. They're awesome. Worked with them, for a little bit over the years. They're fantastic folks to do business with, great partners. Any closing thoughts?
At first, let me say thanks for having me join you today, Tim. This is a lot of fun. Hopefully I didn't talk too much and tank your ratings, but yeah. I mean, it's exciting times, right?
But isn't it though?
There's
Like,
a lot of
you like I know you actually believe that. There's people out there that are like, the sky's falling, and you know what? I get it. I do understand that point of view. I really do. I mean, I have kids that are about to be entering the workforce in the not too distant future. And it's a little whatever. I mean, it's not obvious that it's going to be a very linear path for them. But I just believe, I think as you do, the doors that are about to be thrown open are going to be, I think, way bigger, like orders of magnitude bigger than the ones that are closing. And I think that's just a historical thing. You're a historian. Like you know more than most people in this industry I speak to. Like you are very much a historian, and there's always been doors that close and new doors that open. It's life, right? It's the circle of life, whatever. But I
Yeah.
think the ones that are about to open are just things that like no one's thought of. And your point about Y2K is like, yeah, I think there's going to be quite a need for a lot of solutions out there.
Yeah, and I could be completely wrong, and it might be all Windows from here. I have like no idea, but I guess like there are certainly days that I look at it and I'm like, this guy is absolutely falling. But like the upside of that stance is that at the end you get to say, "I told you it would fall." I mean, that's not really the lottery, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So you should probably go the other route.
It's a good idea. I think you should. I think most people should.
It's like, well, I can sit here in doom and gloom, and then at the end, I guess I get to say I was right, or I can say, why don't I look and see what this means? Let me see if I can adapt. Maybe I can learn.